What happens when a storm, a high school rivalry, and a single moment of fear collide in Frisco, Texas?
I'm Garrett, feeling intrigued and ready to dig into the layers here. Let's keep it chill and thoughtful today.
I'm Leah, empathetically curious and really focused on the human dynamics in this one. Welcome to Laid Back Learning with Leah and Garrett.
All right, let's set the stage for this one. Today, we're exploring the murder of Austin Metcalf and the trial of Carmelo Anthony. Picture this. Back in my junior year, I was at a high school soccer playoff when a thunderstorm rolled in and everybody bolted for the nearest covered spot. Bleachers, concession stand overhang, even the band trailer. It got sardine-level crowded, and people who were all smiles 5 minutes before suddenly snapped at each other for bumping elbows or taking a dry bit of concrete. Emotions rise fast when you're cold and soaked. One guy tried to squeeze through with a drum case, clipped a player, and I remember this instant face-off until a coach wedged himself between them. It went from normal game day to tense standstill in a breath. That stuck with me. Confined space, bad weather, nerves. It's wild how that combo can flip a switch. So when I first heard about a storm delay at a track meet setting off a serious confrontation, I thought, yeah, I've seen the fuse get lit by something as simple as sheltering under the same roof.
That's so relatable. Storms make everything feel louder and tighter. Here we're talking about a track meet at David Kuykendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas, where heavy rain pushed athletes and spectators into close quarters. The tent at issue belonged to Memorial High School, and that's where the initial friction began. We have two 17-year-olds at the center, Austin Matthew Metcalf, a junior at Memorial, MVP linebacker on the football team and on the track squad. He had a twin brother, Hunter Metcalf, who was also there. And Carmelo Sincere Anthony, a senior from Centennial High School, captain of track and football, the oldest of four, working 2 part-time jobs, with no prior criminal history. They didn't know each other before that morning. They were strangers until the storm delay drew them into the same crowded tent.
Right, the basic legal frame is this. In Texas, self-defense is the claim that force was necessary to prevent imminent harm. And because Texas prosecutes 17-year-olds as adults, Carmelo was charged and tried in adult court. That meant standard adult procedures, like a grand jury indictment, a formal charge by community members who review evidence for probable cause. The stakes were high from the jump, though there are age-based limits on punishment. Life without parole and the death penalty aren't on the table for someone who was 17 at the time. Still, the case ultimately led to a 35-year sentence after a conviction for murder. We'll walk the road from the tent to the verdict, then talk about the social crosswinds that turned a local tragedy into a national flashpoint.
Let's unpack the beginning. That morning in April 2025, thunderstorms delayed the meet and multiple schools crowded under tents that are usually team-only spaces. According to witnesses, Carmelo from Centennial sat in Memorial's tent during the storm. Hunter Metcalf repeatedly told him to move, a lot of times. Some witnesses said up to about 15. Then Austin stepped in. The atmosphere was tense, rain beating down, people packed in. Some folks described a vibe where norms about who sits where were strained by necessity. A Memorial coach later called cross-tent sheltering unusual. A Centennial coach said it wasn't unusual, especially in bad weather. That split reflects the gray area. Custom isn't law, and stress blurs boundaries.
From there, the middle builds fast. Multiple student witnesses testified that Carmelo kept a hand in his backpack and warned, "Touch me and find out," or something close to that. One student said Austin pushed or grabbed Carmelo after those repeated requests to leave. The accounts conflict on details like tone and sequence. The surveillance video was grainy, so it didn't settle the argument. In that instant, Carmelo drew a black knife from his backpack and stabbed Austin once in the chest, then ran. The weapon piece is a legal versus policy wrinkle. Carrying a knife is legal in Texas, but school policy bans weapons. So the trial focus wasn't on possession alone, but on the use of the knife in that moment under the tent.
The aftermath is heartbreaking. Austin ran down the bleachers holding his chest, trying to get help. He collapsed, and athletic trainers began chest compressions immediately. He was transported quickly, but was pronounced dead minutes after arriving at the hospital. That single wound defined everything that followed. First responders and the school resource officer later testified, filling in those critical minutes, and you can feel the shock ripple through the whole stadium in those accounts.
Police detained Carmelo nearby shortly after. According to the arrest affidavit, he was crying and said, "I was protecting myself." He also said, "I did it." In the squad car, he asked if Austin would be okay and whether what happened could be considered self-defense. Those statements became centerpieces at trial. Prosecutors pointed to an admission and flight. The defense highlighted fear and immediate references to self-protection. Both sides tried to draw a line from those words to his state of mind.
Legally, the adult track started right away because of Texas's 17 as adult rule. He was charged with murder and booked into Collin County Jail. Less than 2 weeks later, Judge Angela Tucker, known for the bond hearing in this case, reduced bond from $1 million to $250,000, citing no prior criminal history and his academic and athletic standing. He was released with strict conditions: continuous adult supervision, weekly Friday check-ins with the judge's bailiff, no social media, and no contact with the Metcalf family. Over time, due to rising threats and harassment, the court also approved relocating Carmelo to an undisclosed spot for safety. That's notable for someone his age. It spoke to the intensity around this case.
And that intensity spilled outside the courtroom. There were press conferences, one by Carmelo's parents with the group Next Generation Action Network, often called NGAN. Its leader, Dominique Alexander, is a Dallas-based activist. That event got tense when Austin's father showed up and police asked him to leave. Each side viewed that moment through different lenses. Then a white nationalist group calling itself Protect White Americans protested at the stadium, demanding Carmelo be returned to custody. 2 counter-protesters were arrested. Austin's father rejected that protest and asked them to remove his son's image from their website, saying they were deepening racial division. It's a surprising, human detail, a father trying to steer the focus away from a group's agenda.
Misinformation ran hard. A fake account on X impersonated Frisco's police chief and pushed a fabricated autopsy report that reached millions of views. The FBI and local authorities investigated doxing, sharing private info online, and swatting, falsely calling in emergencies to send armed police to someone's home. Both families were targeted, and both fathers left their jobs. Judge Angela Tucker was doxed and threatened. That's the darker modern pattern, where online hostility turns into real risk. The FBI getting involved shows how seriously that spiral can escalate.
Crowdfunding became part of the story, too. Carmelo's family raised money on GiveSendGo, a fundraising platform often used in controversial cases. By May 2025, their total topped roughly $515,000. Austin's family and Austin's pizzeria employer raised about $250,000 combined on GoFundMe. GiveSendGo's co-founder, Jacob Wells, publicly compared the case to Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny in the sense of national arguments over presumption of innocence and self-defense. The site shut down comments on Carmelo's page because of a wave of racist and derogatory posts, and that moderation step made the platform itself part of the public conversation.
Then, the legal gears turned. A Collin County grand jury indicted Carmelo for murder in June 2025. Fast forward to the trial in June 2026 before Judge John Roach Jr., who presided over the trial phase. Jury selection drew attention. The defense raised a Batson challenge, which is an objection claiming jurors were struck because of race. They pointed to the prosecution striking 3 black women. Prosecutors gave a race-neutral explanation, saying those jurors were teachers. The judge accepted that reason, so the challenge failed. The final jury had no black jurors, and that fact became a major discussion point after the verdict.
Openings framed the fight. Collin County District Attorney Bill Werski called it a provoked, unjustified murder and a sneak attack with a concealed knife. He said it wasn't about race or self-defense. The defense attorney, Michael Howard, argued Carmelo was seated, confronted by Hunter and then Austin, and that Austin made first contact. that the stabbing was a split-second reaction in fear and chaos. The state showed grainy video. A memorial coach said it was unusual for a rival athlete to sit in another school's tent. A Liberty High coach described the aftermath and sheltering norms. Jurors heard 911 calls and saw Austin's blood-stained jacket. The first full day made clear that the video left room for interpretation, so witness credibility would be central.
Student witnesses under the tent testified that Carmelo kept his hand in his backpack, warned, "Touch me and find out," and was the aggressor. On cross, the defense emphasized inconsistencies and the fact that Carmelo was seated while multiple people stood around him and that Austin was heavier. Another student said Austin grabbed Carmelo first, but conceded Carmelo provoked him. A police officer testified that carrying a knife is legal in Texas, though it breaks school policy. Carmelo did not testify. That choice avoided cross-examination, but left jurors to read his intent from other evidence. When the defense rested in June 2026, the narrative lines were set: provocation versus fear.
Closings sharpen the contrasts. In June 2026, the jury deliberated about 3 hours, then found Carmelo guilty of murder. They rejected sudden passion, which in Texas is a sentencing phase claim that the person acted under immediate, intense emotion from adequate cause. If accepted, it can reduce punishment. The jury set the sentence at 35 years. The quick deliberation suggested they found the prosecution's case cohesive and were unpersuaded by self-defense or the sudden passion mitigation.
Carmelo was transferred the next day to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, also called TDCJ, beginning intake at the Wallace PAC unit in Navasota. He filed notice of appeal, which preserves legal challenges for a higher court to consider later. Outside the courthouse, tensions flared. A far-right activist named Jake Lang called for Carmelo to be lynched, which is horrifying language. Deputies intervened during confrontations among supporters. One critic of Carmelo was handcuffed after an alleged assault. Reactions online and in the community split quickly, with some public figures criticizing the verdict and others supporting it.
Here's where it gets really complicated. Did race play a role in the trial outcome? Officially, the arrest report didn't list race as a factor. The district attorney, Bill Werski, and Austin's father both rejected race as the motive. At the same time, advocates, including the local NAACP chapter, raised concerns about the absence of black jurors and about peremptory strikes, which are juror removals without cause. Even when a court accepts a race-neutral reason under the Batson framework, the optics can still shake public trust. So I see two tracks. The legal track says the judge ruled the strikes were race-neutral. The legitimacy track says the community perception was damaged by a jury that had no black members in a racially charged environment.
Real talk. I feel the same tension. On paper, the court followed the rules. The Batson challenge rose and fell on the reasons the prosecution gave, which the judge accepted. But people live with what they see. When a jury in a diverse community has no black jurors, especially in a case that sparked racial narratives online, it hits differently. I'm not saying that proves bias decided the verdict. I'm saying the process can feel closed off to some, and feelings matter for legitimacy. Why do you think the deliberations were so fast, though, if the evidence was so tangled by that grainy video and conflicting testimony?
I guess the jurors may have found the state's through line more coherent. The repeated requests to leave, the warning, "Touch me and find out," the hand in the backpack, and the single, high-stakes use of a knife. Even if the video lacked clarity, the testimony might have lined up enough for them. Also, not gonna lie, the law on self-defense asks whether force was necessary against imminent harm. If they believed Carmelo provoked the encounter or could have safely avoided using deadly force, that undercuts the defense. And rejecting sudden passion suggests they didn't see overwhelming immediate emotion arising from adequate cause. It's a high bar.
That's a solid point. And there's the legal versus policy piece. Even if knife possession is legal in Texas, schools prohibit weapons, which probably colored how jurors first felt about bringing a blade into a tense setting. On the other hand, I keep circling back to the seating posture. If Carmelo was seated with people standing around him, even without a literal circle forming, I understand the defense pushing fear. It's one of those scenes where two people can look at the same facts and read opposite stories.
Speaking of stories, pop culture weighed in. Cardi B, the Grammy-winning rapper and cultural commentator, criticized the verdict and sentence, calling it disgusting and not justice. That kind of reaction tells you the case escaped the local frame. Platforms also compared it to Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny. Different facts, for sure, but similar public anxieties about who gets the benefit of the doubt.
Okay, let's take a counterfactual moment. What if the thunderstorms never hit? No weather delay, no crowding, no tent dispute. In that version, the meet runs on schedule, athletes warm up in their own spaces, and two strangers from rival schools may never cross paths so closely. I can imagine Austin and Carmelo each focusing on their events, the normal quick nods between teams, and no cascade of stress. It doesn't fix every underlying tension in a community, but it removes the spark that caught.
Yeah, without the storm, they might only interact at the starting line, or not at all. Weather sounds neutral, but it's a force multiplier. People huddle, customs clash, voices rise to be heard over rain. My guess is the tent etiquette debate, unusual versus common in bad weather, never even surfaces on a clear day. And maybe there's no need for first responders rushing or for police sorting conflicting statements. It's not a guarantee, but the odds of a fatal flashpoint drop a lot.
There's also the long-tail impact. Without the storm, maybe there's no viral fake autopsy report, no swatting, no doxing, no courthouse confrontations after the verdict, because maybe there's no trial. Two families would still be living very different lives. I keep thinking how a small environmental twist changed the trajectory for so many people. That one gave me chills.
So, there we have it. A storm, a crowded tent, split-second decisions, and a courtroom journey that stirred up a whole community and beyond.
Let's stay curious and keep learning. Thanks for taking the time to walk through this with care, and keep looking for context even when the picture is grainy.